the original work of Su Qing's autobiographical novel 10 Years of Marriage Chapter 2, The Night of Flowers, and candles in the wedding room. The gasoline lamps in the front hall, the middle hall, and the main hall at the back were brightly lit. The banquet had been prepared, and there were 8 guests seated. The order was very messy. The bride was sitting at the banquet table at the top of the main hall. 2 8 immortals tables were put together, surrounded by a table skirt of bright red satin and brocade flowers. The rhinestones were nailed like stars all over the sky, and they shone brightly even under the strong light. I changed into a bright red embroidered dress. It was an old-style wedding dress, with a beaded crown on my head, and sat facing south. In front of me was a pair of cups and chopsticks, and 4 tall glass basins filled with fruits, lined up in front of me. On an 8 immortals table far away, there are pearls and 5 animals neatly placed, which are dazzling and dazzling. On the floor in front of the table stood a pair of large candlesticks with statues of the 3 stars of fortune, luxury and Shu, as tall as my body, with a pair of golden candles burning on them, emitting their blazing light. There are 2 pairs of small tables on the table with glass covers, and red candles are also lit at night. There were 4 banquet tables on the left and right sides of the main hall, and there were several tables in the row in front of the steps. The 2 large open wells were covered with colorful tents, and banquets were also set up upstairs. Later, according to their statistics, a total of hundreds of tables were set up that night. There were multiple tables of wine and 1 or 2,000 guests. Women are seated in the main hall and in the Tiangong outside the main hall. There are seats for men and women in the middle hall. The patio outside the middle hall and the front hall are all seats for men. The food and drinks at the men's table are better than those at the women's table. This is also customary. The female guests will never be angry. The honors I sat at the table were the same as those of the male guests, but I couldn't eat. The bride sat at the banquet without raising her hands as usual. Seeing the steaming dishes and snacks being served, I had to secretly swallow. The bridesmaids were watching eagerly, rather than waiting. It was better to say monitoring, because it was always their benefit to accept the dishes on the table, which was also the old rule. In the front hall, there was a lot of noise and excitement from guessing games and drinking, accompanied by the sound of playing and singing from the orchestra, which disturbed your ears and left you with no peace of mind. Although the female guests were more polite, it was just that the children were climbing up and down, grabbing this and that. Sometimes their fingers were burning and hurting. Sometimes their tongues were bleeding. And they were crying and noisy, which was quite noisy. Amidst all the chaos, there was only one question on my mind. Where is my groom? When my groom appeared in front of me, we were already sitting in the room opposite each other drinking hay and wine. This time I said I was drinking, but actually I didn't touch my lips. I just acted out a drama under the direction of the bridesmaid and others. After a while the ceremony was over. Music started playing outside the door, and it was time to give the child a happy package. Then all the guests flocked in and started making room. Making a house is an indispensable gift in any city. It is said that the more trouble there is, the more trouble there is. If there is no trouble, there will be no wealth. Of course, but means getting rich. The main ones in the house are male guests, and they are also organized. They put forward a leader, called the commander-in-chief of the house. Our commander-in-chief of the trouble this time is Xian's aunt's second son, and they all call him Monk Baji. They came in like a swarm. I was startled. I looked at Xian and thought, I don't know how they will make things difficult for us. Unexpectedly, he smiled nonchalantly and stood alone leaning against the window, watching as these drunken wild men surrounded me and made unreasonable demands one by one. We want the bride to sing a foreign song. We want the bride to do a dance. If you don't agree, I'll ask you to run over and kiss the groom. Hey, bride, let me ask you, how many bowls of rice did you eat today? I asked you when will you have a baby? Would you raise your younger brother or your younger sister first? I stood in the middle at a loss, feeling anxious and annoyed. I didn't know what to do just because the bridesmaids were negotiating with them. In the midst of a dilemma, fortunately, a group of old ladies came. These drunken boys knew the etiquette and made way for them. So the old ladies sat down one by one, asked the bridesmaid to bring another chair, put it down in the middle, and asked me to sit on this chair. At this time, I fell into a fog again, not knowing what they were up to. After I sat down, An old lady with silver hair and a flat mouth among them came to give orders and ordered people to bring candlestick. No need for a candlestick, Grandma, I have an electric light. The commander-in-chief of the house troublemaker came up to show his courtesy. You don't have to worry about it. His grandmother refused him, but still ordered the servants. Bring the candlestick. One of the bridesmaids handed the candlestick to her hand, and she then held it tremblingly in front of me to look at it carefully. Her attention seemed to be focused on the space between my eyebrows. After a while, she handed the candlestick back to the bridesmaid and said to me, "Good boy. Your eyebrows are tightly whereupon claustrophobic and quiet. You come from a scholarly family. Good lady, and the bride's facial features are well groomed." Another middle-aged woman with a generous attitude also came to join in the fun. What a blessing. Your old lady has this great-grandson-in-law, and she will have a great-great-grandson next year. Really? The old lady grinned. I hope you two will be harmonious and agree with your great-aunt Chrysostom and raise a fat boy for your parents-in-law next year. Definitely, definitely. The drunkards rushed to answer for me. The old ladies chatted for a while and then left one by one. Finally, Xian's grandmother also stood up. As she prepared to leave, she told her grandson, "Ah Tang, don't make too much noise. The children I'm so young that I can't bear to make fun of you. They are tired today. Let them rest early." While he was talking, several young ladies and mistresses also caught wind of the situation and came after them. The last one who came in was the young woman in silver clothes. Her face was newly powdered. Her mouth was as red as a diamond, and she was heavily smeared with lipstick. The old lady looked very unhappy when she came in. She winked at her and said, "Ruixian, come and help me back." The young woman looked disappointed, so she didn't dare to come over to help her. Her eyes were glaring. Looking at Xian, Xian came up to plead for her. "Grandma, please let my sister-in-law play here for a while, and I will help you back." "No," the old lady said firmly. "Your new house is for good luck." The young woman's face suddenly changed. She came over angrily, supported the old lady hard, and walked out without looking back. "I don't know what's going on. I'm just wondering." So the people who made the quarrel brought up the old story again. They wanted me to kiss the wise man. Of course I ignored them. It was past 12 o'clock and the quarrel was going on. The bridesmaids begged, "Masters, it's getting late. It's time for the young lady and her uncle to have a rest. It's because of all your hard work, sirs. Let's go out and have a rest early in the morning. If it's easier for us to go out, just ask your young lady to kiss my uncle as soon as possible." They shouted together. A young bridesmaid replied, "Kissing is a matter of bed. In front of all the gentlemen. How can Our Lady be willing to do it? I think, what are you thinking?" The commander-in-chief named a Tang and Ba Changmeng said, "Since your lady refuses to kiss, it's you who will do it for you." Everyone clapped their hands when he said this. The bridesmaid blushed and said, "What are you talking about? Let the young lady hold hands with my uncle." They didn't agree at first, but then I saw it was already 1:15, and everyone started to yawn. So they had no choice but to leave it at that and ask me to hold hands with my colleagues. After the guests left, the bridesmaids took off my makeup and tidied up the room. They took out all the candlesticks and foreign lamps, leaving only a pair of floral candles on the big dressing table next to the bed. After finishing cleaning up, they all kowtowed, said give birth to a precious son soon several times, said good night, and went out to the accounting room to receive the wedding package. There were only 2 people left in the room, my friend and I. The trembling, dying candlelight was reflected on the window, dark and silent, and I felt a little scared. Neither of us dared to speak first. I was leaning against the dressing table, but now I was facing the mirror, picking my nails tiredly and boredly. Xian seemed to feel the same way. He took a cigarette on the table, struck a match and lit it. He couldn't take 2 puffs, but put it down again and whistled softly in his mouth. After a while, someone seemed to peek outside the window, and there was a sound. So Xian went to take a look, pulled the curtains tighter, then went to the door gap to observe, and slowly walked behind me. His tall body was reflected in the large mirror on the dressing table, and my height could only reach his chest. He delayed for a moment and said softly and unnaturally, "Ching Mai, let's go to bed earlier. It's 2 o'clock. Still early." I remained silent and lowered my head to my chest, which was beating hard. He rubbed his hands and walked back to the table. Seeing that the cigarette he had smoked last time had not been burned out, he picked it up again and smoked it again. After 2 puffs, he simply threw it into the spittoon. So he yawned twice in succession, and then said to me, "I'm going to bed, Jing Mai. Have you rested earlier?" After a pause, he said, "You are tired enough today." I said yeah at the bottom of my throat, but I didn't move. But he took off his clothes and went to sleep. Only then did I begin to regret it. I thought, if he actually fell asleep and didn't call me, should I just stand here all night? His tired face was reflected in the mirror on the dressing table. His cheeks were red, as if he was overtired and suffering from a rising fever. My eyes were dull and lackluster, and the circles under my eyes were a little dark. I knew that if I didn't go to bed, I would suffer from insomnia all night long. Fortunately, Xian called me from inside the tent again and did not open the tent. I didn't dare to miss the opportunity again, so I took off my coat, wore sweaters, pants and socks, and didn't change into pajamas. When I got outside the tent, I stood still hesitantly. I was tired and eager to go to bed, but my timidity made me dare not open the tent. I stood in front of the bed at a loss for 2 or 3 minutes, but Xian inside didn't seem to notice me, and there was no sound. I thought he might have fallen asleep. Thinking about this, I became a little bolder and opened the curtain in one go. Oh my God, he was staring with his eyes wide open, his face facing outside, nodding and smiling at me. There was only one quilt on the bed, which was made of bright red satin with 100 suns embroidered on it. He had already crawled into it, and there was only one pillow that night. It was said to be a mandarin duck pillow. How bad! If I had come in early, I could have grabbed such an important thing, but now he was allowed to take advantage of it. What should I do? It would be unreasonable to sleep next to him, even if he sleeps behind his feet. He feels embarrassed. His body is already tightly wrapped in the quilt. Should I go up, lift it off, and get in together? I regretted not coming first, but now I am tired. Seeing people sleeping comfortably is like watching people eat big fish and meat when they are hungry at a banquet. I felt very angry and threw down the curtain. He turned around and came out, leaning against the dressing table, unable to help but cry alone.
Alright, this part of the story ends here.
Want to know what happened next? Let's listen to the breakdown next time.